Okay. Then I start.
Yes, okay. Yes, yes, please do.
Yeah. Okay. The Northwest Black Sea region can be actually considered as a separate territory with specific combination of cultural traditions and relatively independent trajectory of cultural historical developments. The region is bordered on the west by the Danube and Prut rivers, and on the east by the Telugu river. The north border runs along a line separating the steppe environment from the forest steppe zone. From the south and southeast, the region is bounded by the Black Sea. And the southwestern part of the region is characterized by several Danubian freshwater lakes such as Cahul, Yalpuk, Kotlabuch, and other. And it's very good developed, very well developed hydrographic network with, which is favorable for early, especially for early agriculture. The Northwest is distinguished by a hilly relief with extensive patches of broadleaf forest, which is in Moldavia called Tigeci, Kodri Tigeci. Kodru means old forest. Along the Black Sea shore, flat lowlands with saltwater water lakes and estuaries, which stretch to the Azov Sea shore, and it's actually predominant in this zone. The territory between the Dniester and Danube and Prut represent so-called Bujak herb steppe with a typical xerophytic and mesophytic vegetation. The steppe environment is extended further to the east, and along these small rivers, forests from the north spreading along the river, along these valleys, and create an additional variety of existing ecotones. And this junction of different ecological environments generates favorable conditions for diversified and coexisting economies during the Eneolithic and also early Bronze Age, including agriculture in river valleys, semi-mobile stock breeding on steppe plateaus, as well as hunting and fishing. The history of the region in the 5th and 4th millennium BC can be presented as a TV serial with several distinctive episodes. They are the first episode, Invisible Past, actually which occupies the first half of the 5th millennium BC, the second episode, Conqueror of the Steppe, the third, Time of Long Knives, fourth, North Pontic in Mist, 5, Jump for the Hills, 6, Epoch of Kierakis, in 7th, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. Sorry for my French. Also, so invisible past. During the second half of the 7th millennium BC, the Balkan-Carpathian region was settled by early farming communities, which in the 6th millennium BC moved further into the forest steppe zone east of the Carpathians, bringing new economic innovations into this region. They were the Krish and linear band ceramic cultures. Almost simultaneously, a peculiar type of Neolithic culture, probably still based mainly on a hunting-gathering economy, coexisted in the Eastern European steppes. However, hardly anything is known about the Northwest Pontic region at this time. In fact, almost no traces of any Neolithic culture can be found in this area in the 7th, 6th, and early 5th millennium BC, except for sparse remains of rare short-term camps of the Gumelniţa culture east of the Dniester, and isolated finds of the Boyan and Linen Band ceramic cultures in the area of the Danubian lakes. It's possible that natural resources in this region were so abundant and variable that there was no necessity for local hunters and fishers to accept and transition into a new style of life. This situation likely continued until the middle of the 5th millennium BC. But then we have the second episode, Conquer of the Steppe. The beginning of the productive economy in the Northwest Black Sea region coincided with the emergence of the Belgrade-Aldane variant of the Gumelniţa A1 culture north of the Danube in the middle of the 5th millennium BC, according to known radiocarbon dates. This event can be indeed considered as an attempt of agricultural communities, Balkan agricultural communities, to colonize the steppe territories. However, in order to initiate this process, in order to survive in these new territories, these agricultural communities had to resolve several crucial problems. First of them was a totally new environment with new climate, new soils, new landscape, and it was necessary to develop special mechanism of survival in these new environments. And the second problem is related to new cultural milieu. In the middle of the 5th millennium BC, steppe territories still were occupied, as I suppose, mostly by hunters and gatherers. And for farming communities, it was necessary to establish good relation with this local population. The third problem was related to raw material sources, because the steppe territory is not rich with rocks and flint and other sources. So it was necessary to develop a new logistic network in order to obtain necessary materials from other regions. And the fourth problem was necessary in wood for building of houses, for production of different things, tools, and so on. And as you know, steppe is not very rich with forests, so it could be also quite serious problem. Nevertheless, these problems were resolved, and we can find agricultural settlements and quite broad territories, and normally they are located on gentle slopes or on low promontories close to the water sources, small rivers or springs, and so on. And most of Gumelniţa settlements are located around the Danubian lakes. Nevertheless, quite many settlements we know also in so-called deep steppes. And we can see quite normal, usual Balkan settlements according to their layout and organization. There are three examples of Gumelniţa or Belgrade settlements in the steppes. One of them is Chilik, and second Taraklia and Kesilia Mare. And they are quite well organized, and dwellings organized in rows, and actually all settlements are surrounded by ditches. In Kesilia Mare, it has this settlement has even 3 ditches. And these settlements are also distinguished by usual for the Balkan cultures houses. These are surface houses with different structures inside, like ovens, hearths, special places for different occupations, and so on. And we can indeed see that the problem of sources of raw materials was resolved completely, because all these settlements have quite many different tools made of rocks, which probably are brought from the Carpathians, and flint. And flint, they are tools. These are tools made of chocolate Balkan flint, and probably from local flint, which could be brought from the nearest sources at the Prut river. And this culture is distinguished by normal, usual Balkan pottery. The ceramic assemblage consists of three main groups: fine pottery, coarse pottery, and semi-fine, so-called semi-fine pottery, which has actually best parallels in the Gumelniţa A1 site in Romania. And these settlements in the steppe existed actually not very long, perhaps not more than 200 years. And they disappeared quite suddenly. And it's interesting to explain the reasons which could cause this event. Many scholars believe that it was because of incursion of steppe stock breeding population from the east, who destroyed these agricultural settlements and pushed farming population back to the Balkans. However, we don't have any convincing evidence for the presence of such stock breeding population at this period in this area. And additionally, we can observe that again, just after the disappearance of Gumelniţa settlements in the steppe, this territory to large extent was occupied by settlements of the Cucuteni dry phase or period. Perhaps it could, this movement of Tripoli culture or Cucuteni culture population to the south, this move could influence this disappearance of Gumelniţa settlements. At least it's such a suggestion. And however, this territory was not empty. And the third episode is related to so-called time of long nights. And as you know, long super blades can be considered as one of the most remarkable attribute of developed Balkan cultures, not only Balkan cultures, but also steppe cultures in the second half of the 5th millennium BC. And in this, already in the middle of the 5th millennium BC, we can find several sites of the so-called Svorova group, which is usually considered as a variant of the so-called Skelia or Novodanilovka culture in the Lower Dnieper and North Azov region. And actually, these sites occupy the whole region. They are known as burial sites, stray finds, and we don't know any settlements of this group in the area in question. And there are some separate cemeteries of this group. These are, for instance, very known already cemetery, flat cemetery at Giurgiulești, and even bigger, larger cemetery east of Odessa, right on the shore of the Black Sea, at Koshare. And we can see that in both cases, there is clear layout, clear plan of arrangement of graves. At Koshare, they are organized in 2 rows, and in Giurgiulești they are concentrated around a cult plot with bonfire, and burial rite is very similar. We see skeletons in a crouched position on the back, and mostly these are individual graves, but sometimes there are also collective graves like this one at Koshare, 1 adult with 3 kinders, 3 children. And some of graves have very, very rich, especially for the steppe zone, very rich grave goods. And the pottery which is known in these cemeteries are mostly related either to Gumelniţa culture, or to the Cucuteni culture. And there are some shards of steppe origin. However, they can belong to the so-called category C of the Cucuteni culture pottery. And there are different things made of flint, metal, stone, bone, and there are many different ornaments or symbols of status and prestige. Quite many metal, copper things, both tools and ornaments. However, in the close to the end of the 5th millennium BC, we don't find any clear traces of any archaeological cultures in the steppes of the Black Sea region. And probably this episode can be called, can be titled North Pontic in Mist. And actually this situation can be observed not only in the Northwest Black Sea region, but also in the Eastern Balkans, where at the end of the 5th millennium BC, Gumelniţa and Karanova 6 cultures, Varna, disappear. And also in the North Pontic steppes, and this period was designated by, for instance, by Yuri Rosomachin and as steppe hiatus, and we see actually kind of break in cultural development. Also, I suppose that this so-called break mostly is mostly linked with disappearance of Cucuceni pottery imports in the steppe complexes, in the steppe finds. And that is why it's impossible to compare these steppe complexes with a well-developed chronology of the Cucuceni culture. However, in the beginning of the 4th millennium BC, we can see the emergence of whole series of different cultures in the steppe zone, which are very different according to their material culture and burial rites. And in this period, in the Northwest Black Sea region, spread the Chernovoda Van culture, and which actually occupies the whole region. And unfortunately, we know only one settlement of this culture at Orlovka on the Danube, but it's very interesting archaeological complex and which consist of different parts. One part represents stone elevation or stone hill, which is called Acropolis. And near this hill, special area, which is called suburb, is located, and about 300 meters east from the settlements, there is a quite extensive flat cemetery of the Chernovoda I culture. And the settlement actually represents this place or this site. It resembles normal Balkan tell with different layers. In the lowest part, there is the settlement of the Gumelniţa culture, and which is covered by the layer of the Chernovoda I culture. And settlements of the Chernovoda I culture looks like a normal Balkan settlement with surface houses, different structures, and it was quite well, quite good fortified, protected, and now 7 defensive ditches are uncovered at this settlement. And ceramic assemblage of the settlement consists of different groups of pottery. There is courseware, mostly this pottery is mostly made of shell-tempered clay and resembles usual steppe pottery. Fineware is very has very good parallels in the Gumelniţa culture ceramics. According to their technology, technological traits and morphology. And there is quite many finds of the Cucuteni B pottery at Orlovka, actually like in many other settlements of this culture in the lower Danube region in Romania. And actually we have here other traits of normal, usual farming culture, including anthropomorphic figurines, tools for weaving, and even quite numerous metal, copper objects. And settlements of the cemetery of at Orlovka includes about 40 graves, which are very different according to position of the deceased. We can occur crouched position on the back, on the left, on the right, and so on. So there is there are no very stable standards in burial rite of this culture. And it's interesting that according to genetic analysis of buried population at Orlovka, there are two genetic groups. One of them is represented by Balkan population, and the second one includes probably local population, local steppe population. And grave goods are quite rare in these graves at the cemetery, and normally include separate vessels, isolated vessels, and sometimes some ornaments, beads, and so on. And actually, this was only one important event in the Black Sea, Northwest Black Sea region in the beginning of the 4th millennium BC. And it evidence for movement of population from the Balkan again in the steppe area. The second event, very important for this period, is emergence of the kurgan burial rite, kurgan burial tradition. And unlike of early cemeteries, barrows or late Eneolithic barrows are situated on the high watersheds, high plateau, high hills, and from the beginning they are distinguished by very complex structures, which include not only simple earthen mounds, but also many additional structures like cromlechs, coating, cairns, and so on, and some wooden structure. And perhaps with the appearance of the Chernovod I population in this region, in the steppe region, we can speak about the development of new forms of semi-mobile stock breeding, which was based on breeding of small horn stock. And that is why the inner steppe territories could have at this period very important significance for economic needs. That is why burial sites or barrows occupy the highest points of reliefs in this period. I suppose that emergence of this new tradition was related with the development of this new form of semi-mobile stock breeding. And these early kurgans, as I told you, are quite complex structure from different features, earthen and stone and wooden. And we can see that such complex structures represent more than almost 2/3 of all known kurgans of this period. And like in at the Chernovoda 1 culture cemetery at Orlovka, we can see the same very diversified, very high level of diversity in position of the deceased. They can lie on the back, on the left, or the right side, and and normally, like in Orlovka, these graves contain not very many grave goods. The grave goods contain mostly pottery, and we can discern three main groups of the pottery. These are Chernovoda 1 vessels, which are similar to pottery at the settlement of Orlovka. Imports from the Kukutень B culture area, and some vessels which are made according to Kukutень technological tradition. However, they don't have any parallels in the pottery, in the ceramic assemblage of the Kukuteń culture. Sometimes in some graves, anthropomorphic figurines occur, and very rare some small copper finds, even gold ornaments and other, but these finds are very rare. And the Chernovoda 1 culture had very interesting continuation later in the epoch of hierarchies, which is related to the Usatovo culture, which occupies in the middle of the 4th millennium BC almost the same, almost the whole region, except territories close to the Black Sea shore and Danubian lakes, where survived, where the late Chernovoda 1 culture survived. Here we can see distribution of different sites, mostly kurgan cemeteries of the Usatovo culture in the northwest Black Sea region. And this territory was occupied by the Chernovoda 1 culture. And archaeological sites of the Usatovo type are represented by settlements and barrow and flat cemeteries. There are known very large archaeological complexes which embrace different types of sites. The best example of structurally complex archaeological site is represented by Usatovo большой куяльник near Odessa. It consists of a settlement, which is considered to have been a ritual center, and 3 barrow cemeteries and 1 flat cemetery. And to some extent, similar structure we can find at other side of the Usatovo culture, at Mayaki, which consisted of settlement and cemetery nearby. And at Mayaki, only complex system of different ditches was uncovered during excavation. And at Usatovo, there are many different types of structures, including long corridors, pavements, and so on. And many kurgans of the Usatovo culture are distinguished by complex structure and include different features made of stone and earth. And about 50% of Usatovo kurgans have only earthen mound without any additional constructions. And like in the Chernobog culture, burial rite of the Usatovo culture is very diversified. All burials have been made according to inhumation rite. Most of graves contain only 1 skeleton, whereas double or collective burials are extremely rare. At the early stage, quite different positions of deceased are evidenced, and they could be disposed in a crouched position on the back or on the left side with different position of hands. And unlike the Chernobog culture, most of graves of the Usatovo culture are accompanied with sometimes with very rich grave goods. And one more specific trait of the Usatovo type graves are, or burial sites are, quite numerous anthropomorphic stela or plates with engravings or bas-reliefs of depiction of different animals or people. And ceramic assemblage of the Usatovo culture consists of two groups. One of them is represented by the painted late Tripolia vessels, and the second one has clear traces of the previous Chernobog I culture according to its technology and ornamentation. And metal finds, different metal finds, daggers, axes, adzes, and etc. Quite numerous in Usatovo graves, as well as different ornaments or symbols of rank or status, which include sometimes some things very rare or even exotic, like amber, glass, gagat, coral, etc. And also female figurines. And precisely in the Usatovo culture, we can occur for the first time so-called priestly graves, which are very similar. With three examples, one from Usatovo, one from Purkari cemetery, and one from the Alexandrovka kurgan. And they are very similar according to, actually almost identical according to their sets of weapons, tools, and even pottery. Perhaps we can actually, for the first time, we can speak about the existence of special social elite in the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age in this region. And the emergence and stable development of Usatovo communities for about 250, 300 years were conditioned by unique conjunction of different factors. They could embrace appropriate climatic conditions, effective stock breeding, cumulative effect of important technological innovations, and steady relationships with neighboring farming communities of the late Tripoli culture, including intermarriage links. The decline and final disappearance of the society could be provoked by negative climatic events started about 3003 3300 BC. The middle of the 4th millennium BC is distinguished by clearly outlined cultural borders. Such clear borders can be explained by existence of centralized social power, which was concerned by maintenance of these borders. Close to the end of the millennium, these borders collapsed. And it was related with the emergence of the Životilovka type burial sites. And unlike Chernobog I culture and the Usatovo culture, which were distributed only in the steppe zone, burial sites of the Životilovka type are evident also in the forest steppe zone. And unlike the Usatovo and Chernovodovan culture, we can see that most of kurgans of the Zhivatilovka group consisted only of earthen mound, whereas additional constructions made of stone are extremely rare. Sometimes these graves constitute small cemeteries, but normally they are occurred only as isolated graves under kurgans. And unlike the Usatovo Chernovoda culture, the burial rite of the Zhivatilovka group is very, very stable. The deceased are buried in a crouched position on the left or right side, with the hand in front of the face. It's very stable position, and quite many graves of the Zhivatilovka type contain grave goods, also not very rich. Normally these are just isolated vessels or other things. And we can see here at least 3 groups of pottery. One of them is related to the late Tripolian culture. It's painted pottery. And other group of the pottery can have local origin, or they, some of them really resemble the pottery of the Mycop culture. Mycop culture from the North Caucasus, and additionally, such hook-shaped pins or pendants are also well known in the graves of the Mycop culture in the Caucasus. Also, some flag-shaped arrowheads has close parallels in the Caucasian material. And actually, the same material, the same burial rite is observed not only in the northwest Black Sea region or in the forest steppe zone east of the Carpathian, but further to the east until the northern Caucasus. And what is interesting, actually, it's impossible to draw any clear border between different territorial groups, which are very similar according to their burial rite and grave goods. Actually, the same material can be found in the Dnieper area and in the North Pontic, North Azov area, Lower Don, and so on. And unlike previous Usatovo culture, we don't find any clear evidence of complex social structures, traces of social hierarchies. It's supposedly it was quite egalitarian society, mostly based on mobile stock breeding. And this culture existed not very long and was displaced probably by the representatives of the pit grave or Yamnaya culture, which came from the east. Actually, it's all. Thank you for your attention.